So we would like to talk about the Corona crisis and how different businesses are dealing with this crisis. So the main message I have for the business world and for product managers is that you need to be proactive about this crisis. What I suggest is to look at your product from two different dimensions. One is the virtual dimension and the other one is the necessity dimension. My name is Leo Zalicario. I'm the managing partner of StarVision. So let's have a look at this analysis framework that we've built called the virtual necessity map. It is based on two dimensions. The first dimension that we're looking at is the virtual dimension. So what you should be asking yourself there is to what extent your product or service is virtual. So in other words, to what extent can the product or service be consumed remotely over distance? That would be the first dimension. The second dimension would be how necessary it is for the customer. So to what extent the customer feels that your product is a necessity for them. It's a little bit tied to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you can use that when you make your analysis to what extent your product is in the lower levels of the hierarchy. So now we can actually map different products and services onto this chart. I would challenge you and encourage you to do that. Think about your product. I'll give some very basic examples here just to make sure that you're familiar with this chart. So if you look at things like a rock concert or a football game, which you would be watching in a stadium, or if you think about international tourism, all of these are very physical products, so very low on the on this y-axis dimension, and at the same time they're very much a nice to have type of product. So it's not very necessary. You can actually manage without going to a concert for a few weeks, maybe a few months. So on the other hand, you have online games, which are also on the left side of this map. So they're not very necessary, but they're very virtual. If we move over to the top right, we'll see products such as Zoom or telecommunication, which in most cases, especially in business context, would be a necessary product, but it's very virtual. So it can be used remotely. You can have social distancing and still use all these products at the top. And when you go back to the lower right-hand corner, you would have physical products such as clothes or food. That would be a very necessary product, very physical at the same time. So if we look at this map, we can actually divide it into a few different sections. We can divide it into what I would call, in context of the Corona crisis, the death zone. So the death zones are products and services which are concentrated on industries which are, on the one hand, very physical but are not very necessary for the customer. On the other hand, the upper right-hand triangle is a safe zone. So this is the safe zone from our perspective. We see products there that can actually continue to generate value to customers and generate revenue. What do you do if your product is in the death zone? There's actually two things that you want to consider. First, try to think about how you can make your product more virtual. So move it up on this chart. One way to do it, for example, is if your product is in international tourism, maybe you're providing some kind of a tour, real live tours to customers, to consumers, maybe you want to consider moving that to be a virtual tour. So people can actually consume your virtual tour without actually traveling. That's one option. The second option is trying to think of ways of making your product more necessary, and maybe that would take considering moving it towards a business customer rather than consumer. So those are the two things that you want to consider, is either making your product more virtual or make your product more necessary. So for a product manager or a business leader, you need to look at this chart and see how you can actually move the product to a place where it's going to be able to generate revenue for you. So thank you for being with us.
We would really appreciate it if you take the time to answer the survey. It takes about 3 minutes, and the link is right on this slide, and it should also be down on the comments. Thank you very much.